Buonasera a tutti.
Good afternoon. This is the second part of our meeting of the day. We have with us Professor Father Giuseppe Bonfrate, who is a priest of the Diocese of Taranto, but he's also professor of dogmatic theology at the Gregorian University, and he's also a member of the Synod and delegate president of the Assembly of the Synod of Bishops. So it's a great joy that we welcome him with us, because today he's going to talk to us about a very important topic with the charism of the Pallotti family. It's co-responsibility of all baptized. Therefore, he will give us a lot of elements of sharing and also knowledge on this topic. We thank him for having accepted to be with us and to share this first day of Congress. Thank you, Father. The floor is yours.
Buon pomeriggio.
Good afternoon. There's a verse of the Book of Wisdom. He, in fact, created all things because for them to exist. The creatures of the world are bearers of salvation. Wisdom 1:14, the Book of Wisdom. This reference to the Book of Wisdom expresses a dear topic that, with his sense universalistic, puts under the divine action everything. What appears in this verse, again, Wisdom 1, verse 14, is to see how the agency of the creation of God are filled by a mission. Everything is created by God because everyone and everything can be bearers of salvation. We will go back to this point, see how it clearly appears that the created world is posed under the sign of the sacramental aspect. But what I would like to highlight now, it was how in line this principle of the Book of Wisdom is with the intuition of Saint Vincenzo Pallotti and his consideration of considering a call to apostolate that involves each and every one. And now that we are celebrating the synodal process, the topic of co-responsibility is a protagonist. And connected to this, we need to imagine a double expression, a sort of a double rooting, if you like. The concept of people of God and the appreciation of baptism as the beginning, the part of the participation that should never be exchanged with the concept of collaboration, but it has to be understood as co-responsibility. Creatures of the world are bearers of salvation. This determines the object and the weight of co-responsibility, because what is at stake is salvation. As your founder would say, it is a matter of become bearers, transmitters of the endless love of God and his infinite mercy. Without this concept, we cannot understand his answer to the inspiration of 9 of January of 1935, where the need of the mission surfaces. The mission has a universal character, not only for how wide it is. Where there's suffering, there we have to see an appeal, and we need to recognize it, to recognize a call. But it is universal also for the fact that everyone is involved, starting from the baptized who bring the inner sign of this call, unifying the divisions of class and of hierarchy. Then not only there are the priests or the religious and as those who put into practice the lay, but priests, religious and lay are thought together. So it is a constitutive element of the missionary indication, this being recognized as together. Here we have the challenge of what the common aspect, the form of that being part of an action that sees the need of a challenge approached together. This should be considered pretty important today, because it is so topical, so current, that as we skip the self-determination that goes beyond heaven, where each one is savior of oneself by navigating by individualism, but there are also collective individualism, meaning populisms. By navigating between identities, we pose the problem. A problem that is contextualized in a soteriology conflict, where the message of a saving Lord seems to be put aside by other agencies of that bring ephemeral gifts, but the very seductive eternal youth, health, richness, power. But ephemeris as capable to put the reality as constitute as fragile and vulnerable. There's no room for this. But the countersign of the Christian mission is that of considering what seems to be not seated at the table of the salvation table, loved by the Lord. And so it is in this way fragile and vulnerable. It is considered desired as participating to the redemption. What we need to avoid is to consider the common as the antagonist of the person. Saint Vincenzo Pallotti anticipates what decades after will be expressed as communitary personalism, of which Vatican Council II is filled. Let us read Gaudium Spes 32. As God created man, not because they live individualistically, but to join in society. So to him always to sanctify and save, and not one by one out of every individual link, but he wanted to create them as a people who would know him in the truth and wholly would follow him. I continue, God makes me. At 32, in the beginning of the history of salvation, he himself has chosen some men, not only as individuals, but as members of a certain community. In fact, the chosen ones by God, they manifesting his design, called his people. With this people, he created the union. This community imperfected by the work of Christ Jesus, who the incarnated Word wants to be participates in the human element. So the adjective common in its meaning appears apart from in the will, the divine will, as qualifying the essence of the baptism, common. Cum munus, from the Latin. So united by the gift. Cum munus. A gift that brings within it a sort of different reflex. I would never say the opposite, because the word mus means together, gift and task, gift and mission. In the word mus, we have not only an ambivalence, gift and task, but also what an anonymous author of the 2nd century writes about the Christians that in the world live according to a method of life, mirable and undoubtedly paradoxical, and the text of Ad Unitum. And here, the author is describing the mystery of Christianity, mysterium, and the word that is behind the word sacramentum. It's a word that came up, it's linked to Tertullianum the historian, but its root in the Bible that we find in the New Testament has an equivalent, mysterium, mystery. And therefore, the mysteric quality of Christians from the 2nd century is qualified according to this aspect of something paradoxical. It's as if coming out of the schemes to admit that at the same time it has a gift, and at the same time there's a task to it, a task and a gift. So this paradoxical aspect, joining the elective gratuitousness we have not chose because of our merits, and the consequence that this gratuitousness opens to contribute to broaden those who can enjoy this gift that have an inner voice, reminds us never without the other, never without our neighbors. In fact, this common cum munus. He was saying that this adjective reveals its baptismal essence. In baptism, in fact, we participate in tria muneram, the three gifts that are the gifts that come from the human experience of God that are put in each baptized, and these are the priesthood, regality, and prophecy. We can reread the story of Jesus through these three categories or dimensions. Priesthood, being victim and priest to annul the great consequence of the broken alliances among the creator and creatures. Its incarnation as for the lost lamb until the death that brings us at the same time lamb and priest until the resurrection and heaven, as in going to the north of the love of this world he has taken on, that now he leads to heaven in the reality and as a promise, where one can say that heaven and earth are no longer separated. Its regal aspect that takes us in this taking not as an express element of servitude, but as an element to offer one's own service in favor of salvation and its prophecy. Words and gestures that reveal the proximity of God and a right world in the possibility of a kingdom of justice, love, freedom. Remember, my kingdom is not of this world. But these words are pronounced in human decision. They take shape in our bodies that intertwine salvific relationship and not of power, that instead describe and carry out relationship of servitude. Participation is the primary expression of co-responsibility, that is expression of a service to the benefit of all on the basis of these gifts, to serve, not to exercise a power that puts everyone under the power, and this decisive point, power. How often in the participation of all the baptized we have the shadow of power and sometimes legitimate frustration of not being able to participate in it. But power, as the way we understand it, according to logics that are antagonist, is not an evangelical word. The word evangelic, the evangelic word is different, necessary to understand the articulation of charism and ministry. Let us remember this. Charism bears within it the word grace, charis, that lives the same dynamic of the word uns, expression of a gift, grace, free, gratuitous, that is given in function of all, therefore is intertwined to the adjective common. We see how we are setting up the categories in Lumen Gentium in number 12, in the second paragraph. We articulate the doctrine of charism, posing it in the function of contributing charism, of contributing to the holiness and the guide of the people of God. So, sanctification and guide. Sanctify. Let us read in the first paragraph, where it's expressed the centrality of the prophetic office of the people of God, connecting it to the sensus fide, related to the achievement of the consensus fide, that is the unity that is built in the sharing of what we believe in, and that creates bonds in the way we act. Often we ask ourselves of this smell of those who believe, like it is in the words of Pope Francis when he says to explain the sensus fide, he moves his fingers next to his nose, and it's something smell. To well understand what this is about, we need to go back to Saint Vincenzo Pallotti, who anticipated the need expressed by Vatican II of the attention to the signs of the times. Remember Gaudium Express 4, and to the permanent duty of the Church to look for the signs of the time and to interpret them in the light of the gospel, so that way to each generation we can respond to the perennial questions which man asks about his present life and the life to come, and about the relationship of the one to the other. We must therefore recognize and understand the world in which we live, its explanations, its longings, and its often dramatic characteristics. This is what Gaudium et Spes specified regarding the signs of the time. But going back to the ability of Vincenzo to intercept this dimension, to grasp this dimension, we ask ourselves, what are the signs of the time, if not those human realities that question us to the rewriting of the gospel in each time? The signs of the times are some mendicant hands that are addressed to those to the believers. Help me, appreciate me, don't neglect me, give me a word, make me exist, take me out of my invisible situation. So the sense of faith becomes this glance that intercepts the needs, the new needs of every time, and tries to look for the answers with facts of the gospel. So just with the eyes of San Vincenzo Pallotti were opened, and also your eyes should be opened. Let's not enclose yourselves in yourselves. Remotivate yourselves to the mission, starting from the glance, the gaze, the way we see things. What do we see? To look or not to look, or to see or not to see, is already a matter of action or a lack of action. Rerum novarum, the signs of the time, the workers, the dignity of women. It is to see or not to see. It's a matter of seeing or not seeing. And to recognize that there's a need of a position, a Christian position, to recognize and as a consequence act with the facts of the gospel. And therefore, there's a need of each and every one. There's a need of the eyes of each and every one. In fact, we go back to the charisms just like they are presented in Lumen Gentium 12, and I quote, "The Holy Spirit is not limited to sanctify and guide the people of God through the sacraments and ministries and to adorn the virtues, but giving to each one one's own gifts as he likes." Corinthians 1 goes on. He distributes special graces among the faithful of each rank. By these gifts, he makes them fit and ready to undertake the various tasks and offices which contributes to the renewal and building up of the church, according to the words that the Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 12, the manifestation of the Spirit is given to everyone for profit. To everyone for profit, common profit. Once again, common for everyone. Check. The charismatic aspect is this common advantage. I can continue in Lumen Gentium 12, and these charisms, whether they may be the more outstanding and the more simple and widely diffused, to be received with the thanksgiving and consolation, for they perfectly suited for the useful needs of the church. We must not ask the extraordinary gifts, nor hope from it fruits of apostolic labor. But judgment as to their genuinity and proper use belong to those who are appointed leaders in the church, to whose special competence it belongs not indeed to extinguish the Spirit, but to test all things and hold fast to that which is good. I finished the quote, Lumen Gentium 12, but putting it a hierarchical charism and ministries. We forgot the common element. Charisms and ministries have something in common. The element of baptism, but we have also forgotten the value of a fundamental distinction. The seriousness of the ordained ministries according to the different degrees to relate to the charisms, considering this as a discernment action, precious to the point that to be able to compromise there when it is not expressed with zeal, to compromise the gifts of the Spirit. So, when we do not recognize the value of a person, not only we are offending the person's dignity, but we're also neglecting the action of the Spirit. So the ministry has this task. That is that delicate one, like of keeping the understanding the graces of God that explains His gifts, because those gifts are necessary for all, and not having recognized this or having even discarded them compromises the mission itself that has been entrusted to the church. So, ministries and charism, we need to find the origin, which is the only origin, which is the baptism and its gifts. And these three gifts qualify the common dignity of all the baptized, whose expression is distinguished according to the different charisms and the different ministries, whose reason is to be found not as a privilege, but as a service to the common needs of salvation of God. The characteristic that those gifts have that are common, they have a nature memory, a participatory aspect. That is, through it we learn to decline the existence in the plural sense. The parable of the talents, talking about the gifts, it's easy. Lead back this to the parable of the talents. The parable of the talents is understood at the final judgment. I am, that what I have finds its answer and meaning in being an answer to the need of the others. I am hungry, you have given me to drink. I was thirsty, you have given me. I was naked, you dressed, you clothed me. The gifts have this open element to it, that qualified only in a responsorial way. What I have is expected by he who does not have. So, the munus take us from the pretense of ownership. We have lost the original of a community element, so it's difficult for us to understand this constant search of unity and harmony between charism and ministries. But now we need to go back to the risk on this harmony, without which it's not understandable or what it means, the term co-responsibility. And this shadow is made up by power. Often we interpret co-responsibility And the participation, we think about the bodies of organization, councils, as participation to power, co-responsibility, division of power. But this is not the case. The word power in the gospel exists, but not as it would be given to the world. This term in the New Testament goes from a Greek word, exousia. Ex, ousia, be, to be. It means exousia, what comes out of the being. And there's another word close to this, and it is clearly suggestive. Existing, what is free. Therefore, what we receive, the power, the Gospel of John talks about what we become, thanks to the Spirit, is the participation to life of God that makes you be not self-sufficient, therefore recognizes of the need of the others because you know it. What you have received, it is not yours. And therefore renders you free from yourself. The problem of the Gospel of John in our community. The verb that was in front of God is the same one in which the world has created. Everything has been done through him. And without him, nothing has been created of all that exists. So he came among his people, but his did not welcome. But verse 12, there we has with exousia. But to all who well believed him, he had accepted him, he gave them the right to become children of God, the one who believed in him. So to be Christians, we become through baptism. It means to participate in this exousia, which is the children, and that is expressed in the following of Christ, in the freedom of becoming in line with the image of Christ, created, Genesis says, to the image and likeness. Genesis 1:26. The fathers of the church, they did not understand these two reasons. They could not understand these image and likeness. Why? Until they were able to find a synthesis. And perhaps we can retranslate them. The image qualifies the belonging. It's a little bit like DNA. We have, they cannot be denied, erased, because that's what it is. But this is the image. And likeness, how does this respond? It is the free answer of each person to correspond to that image, to be like the Son of God. We go back to power, like it comes from the experience of Jesus, because if we need to think image and likeness, to be like Jesus, express the power of Jesus in our co-responsibility. So we need to conform our way of exercising power to the way in which Jesus, exercised. So this is the Christological element of co-responsibility. To do this, in order to do this, let us stay in the Gospel of John, chapter 10, the Good Shepherd. To give life and the heart of the evangelical and of the Paschal, that now takes on the foundation of the believing community. Jesus is the Good Shepherd because he has given and continues to give his life flock, his ability to take care of the flock without its origin here. To understand the company, John is the opposite that of the merchant, described in verses 12 and 13. He brings in his same name what is an impediment in order to be a good shepherd. And he's there for money. He has a hired man. What is the relationship he has with not with those sheep that are not? John says he does not feel them as his, as part of him and of his own story. They are distant for him. They are for him just a source of earning. He doesn't care, John says. He doesn't care of the sheep. At 13. Therefore, when he leaves the flock and the price paid is not worthwhile his life. His own life is that of the sheep. His life is more precious. Instead, Jesus is a good shepherd because he is not a hired man, and he will not let him become the hired hand. When we transfer models until we reach God, we transform him into a hired man. Hired hand. Yes, he was offended by what I said. When we think that we need to give him something in exchange, but that's not the case. God is not a hired hand. And even less so Jesus. So Jesus, because he is not a hired hand, he can truly take care of the sheep. He's doing this in intimate knowledge, the shepherd and his sheep. Verse, I am the good shepherd, I know my sheep, and my sheep know me, which is authenticity of relation, participation to the events of the other, that is, compassion. An intimacy that does not close, it does not become a sect, because Jesus immediately asked, and I have other sheep that are not of this sheep gate. I must bring them also. Verse 16, John. So when he takes care of the nearby sheep, he thinks and he bears in his heart also the faraway sheep. It's a shepherd with broad horizons, capable of a glance that goes beyond the gates that we human beings build and where we often close ourselves in. And allow me to say, it is a temptation also of the believer's life, the life of the faithful. We are tempted by also this in religious dimensions. But how is this possible, such a freedom as to oneself and others? As to towards oneself, because this shepherd knows how to take care of the flock without asking for a salary, like the hired hand compared to others, because he's not enclosed into the gates built by us human beings. Jesus reveals the origin of this ability in the final verses of when he talks about a strange authority, ecstasy. And this is what he says. This, my Father loves me. This, because loves me, is that I lay down my life only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down on my own account. And he adds, I have authority, ecstasy, to lay it down, and authority, exousia, to take it up again. John talks to us about another authority. The root is the same one, not because the word is the same. Authority is specified in a different way. Here we're talking about an authority on oneself, that is that the root of each authority at the service of others, that it's expressed in actions that are truly effective. True authority and foundation authority of the Good Shepherd that distinguishes hand from the hired hand is this one: the freedom from oneself. The freedom from wanting to save oneself, that here is expressed in the ability, authority of self-giving. Therefore, supreme manifestation of this freedom from oneself is the last temptation, Jesus on the cross. Come down. This is what they tell him. Show that you are divine and you will convince us. Come down. Free your angels, your enemies. And the dilemma is to save oneself or to finish the mission. With that characteristic from the very beginning has clear, it was a mission that was addressed to freedom, and that this freedom would have never been undergone with special effects. Remember temptations to Jesus during the desert. Transform these stones in bread, and they will follow you. These special effects. Dostoevsky will repropose this image to manifest what is the problems of Jesus in the history. Obstination in thinking and believing in freedom of creatures. The Inquisitor is addressing Jesus, making him feel guilty, telling him, you continue believing in freedom. Give bread to the people. Give them to ends. You will see them, they will follow you. You have ruined us, the Inquisitor said. How many shortcuts in our ability to conform ourselves to Jesus. At the end of the Gospel of Matthew, the missionary mandate of the disciples by Jesus has this expression: "You have been given all power, exousia, in heaven and earth. Go to all the nations. From then, all the nations and all, through baptism, can participate in that power that Jesus has given, and which is conveyed from one generation to the other, and that power is not bound to a typical form. It is extended to all baptized." But this power goes through the possibility given to the freedom of each one to be in the resemblance, which is inscribed, a voice that speaks to us from the inside. You can be like Jesus, but a problem surfaces. That is that of clericalizing power and to see it as a prisoner of the hierarchy. Let us observe Lumen Gentium. Sometimes the index are better than the entire books. Chapter 1, first paragraph, the mystery of the church. Second, people of God. Third, the hierarchical constitution of the church. Just by looking at this, you can understand what it means, the fact that it is a problem and a mistake to clericalize hierarchically the element of power, because we have inside of ourselves still the mentality of the antagonism of power as power over somebody. Instead, when we recover the concept of exousia, we understand why Lumen Gentium is not a problem of considering this broad opening. Lumen Gentium 1, universality. The mission of the church is in the mystery of conveying the light of God. And this light of Christ has a double goal objective, that of joining to Christ all human beings and to join them among one another. Therefore, if we were to look for the proof of the right mission, we should always do it through this universal element as a first element of test, where we qualify the need of a common element, not only in the mission, all in mission, but also common as a goal itself of the mission to unite. That is a relational dimension that poses as a final goal that of joining all to Christ and to join in this perspective all human beings. Then we can go to the people of God. The mistake that you will never make, but instead is done, is to suppose the people of God as a sort of agricultural element, like the sheep, right? And then the shepherds. No, the people of God joins shepherds and sheep. Charisms and a horizontal aspect which each and everyone must feel represented. Then the hierarchical dimension of the church, that is the service and the recognition of the charisms. Therefore, let us not make the mistake of clericalizing power, the issue of power, because if not, as a consequence, we think that co-responsibility means the sharing of the ordained ministerial aspect. I don't know whether we will come to this point, but in any case, this is not the point. Co-responsibility is not a hostage to clericalization. The hierarchy, Lumen Gentium, comes from the people of God, and it's described as messianic people united and consecrated to the risen Christ. What element of this? There are the clashes, a messianic that's measured with the success according to subversive worldliness. If you are who you are, why don't you take away the Romans from us, messianic people? All this is followed until today. Or is the messianic people of the suffering servant who reinterprets the baptismal gift. And then, so the priesthood, that translates the ability to be living, the common priesthood, that translates the possibility of being living stones that are next to Christ, the living stone chosen by Christ according to the first letter of Peter. We ourselves, we are used as stones to carry out a spiritual building in this world. And here is the other element that brings to the creation, to the responsibility of the salvation of this world. And here is the prophecy, talk throughout life with his words in the silences and the elements of history. And so we're going towards the end, going back to another conclusion, that of Vatican Council II in 7th of December 1965, in the words of Paul VI in his closing address. Lay profane humanism appeared in the terrible element and in some way has challenged the Council. Religion of God who has become man has found with the religion, because that it is, of man who becomes God. At the beginning, remember the conflict of esoteriology, the self-determination, the possibility of saving oneself on their own. It seems irrelevant in God, saving God. From 1965 until today, things have not improved. What has occurred? Paul VI, a clash, a struggle. It could have been, but it did not occur. Ancient story, this Samaritan has been the paradigm of the spirituality of the council, and it has all pervaded the discovery of the needs, and how bigger is the Son of Earth. The discovery of the human needs has taken the attention of our synod. Give the merit of this, at least, you, modern humanism, give up to transcendence of supreme things, and you will recognize our new humanism. We too, in fact, we more than any others honor mankind. What mankind? Especially the mankind in the image of the Samaritan that has fallen there. He's struck and neglected. Neglected by who? Neglected by those who should have been the first one to recognize him, but they have put up their religious purity. They couldn't touch him, so they should be we ourselves are filled with these ideas. But the problem is another. The problem is to recognize of an urgency that overcomes everything, and it is human wound. The need to be helped, and this is what convinced God to send his Son. And there's no mission that can be understood without starting from this assumption. The primacy is the need for salvation. And there is no mission that can find people capable of being at its service that does not recognize that that service has as a single reason to become sacraments of salvation for those who need to be saved. I'm going to skip some parts, but I will have to absolutely include this part. Another of the intuition of Vatican II is to recognize the missionary essence of the Church, as to say, the meaning of the Church is mission. Where mission is not the transmission of a doctrine, mission is to give strength and express value, truth, justice to that sacramental aspect, to allowing Christ light to reach each man and woman of the earth. Mission. And there, Christianity is a religion that helps us to come out of the exclusive and comfortable way of religion. It is born through go. The church going forth, the Pope Francis spoke about in Evangelica, become disciples of all peoples, Matthew 29:19. We are baptized to come out of the water that baptized us. Right in front of the bishop that imposes the hands, a gesture that expresses affection, affectus. You are at home now, and held our hand to take us to the Eucharist, and it's there where we understood that we found a community, a communus community, where the being part and the being responsible was learned from gestures and words that concretely were asking to receive, but also to become what one had received. What is it? Jesus, who says, taking the bread, this is my body, eat it. If not, to put in us a new way of being in the world, capable of being able to tell everyone, eat me. Co-responsible, We think about the division of power, but we need to understand as autoritas, that is, to be tools to allow to grow, to make room, to encourage. Co-responsible in the mission, which is the mission of Christ that is entrusted to the church. We can see this in the Gospel of Mark. We're at the beginning of the mission in Galilee, where he started to choose his disciple. It's Saturday, the day of the Lord. And he enters into synagogue. There's a man. He sees that inside in the day of the Lord, among us, we are not safe. But inside of us, we have the good and evil. No temptation. Comes out from the synagogue. Mission is inviting us to go. No one can keep prisoner the Lord. No one can make the mission prisoner. Comes out of the synagogue and he enters into a house, in a very small house, and it's a suffering that calls him. Peter's mother-in-law is sick. He enters, goes towards her, she takes us by the hand, and she asks him to stand up. And it's the grace. The mystery of incarnation, like it's been described by Saint Inariah by the parable of the lost lamb, the lost sheep. This is the mystery of incarnation, one going out after the other to go through our story. There's a group of those who are okay, they're good ones, but we cannot comfort ourselves in the obedience. Something is relentless. No one can stop that shepherd. He goes, he leaves the 99 sheep that are inside the gate of obedience because he had realized that one is missing. For us, it's surprising, perhaps, that we are even disappointed. We are fascinated by consensus, by the numbers, by the percentages. We are consoling ourselves with those who are there. Jesus comes out of the gate to go to look for the lost sheep that has lost the way, that does not recognize the right address, that doesn't have the right document, that is moving on the wrong paths. This, to St. Inarius, is the spark of incarnation, of the divine decision to come out of Trinitary perfection, to go through heaven, to come down, to go and look for the lost humanity. Mystery of love and mercy, infinite love and mercy. Let's listen to the words of Jesus. I've come to look for the sinners. I've come to look for the lost sheep of Israel. The scene, it's not to look around. Prudence first is trying to see things. He doesn't see it. He sees that the only thing that he must do is to risk, to look, and there he sees it. In his going down, we see now an immersion in the abyss of nothing holds him. Goes down and then finally takes it. As like his, Peter's mother-in-law, he kneels down and he sees that he could not go up on our own. So he puts the sheep on his shoulders. We are here, Irenaeus says, in front of the image of redemption. He takes the weight on himself, the weight of the return, the weight on his shoulders. He does so the path of going back, meaning that, come to me, you who are oppressed and tired, and I will lighten your weight. I will carry it. I'm going to carry it for you. Like in the synagogue, we understand that no one is safe. We're all needy of freedom. Let us go to Cafarna, in that small home. When there's this sick woman there, she represents us. We have need to be healed. Mark, like it's in his style, in the words, in his gospel, he is out to address also the word of God. all of it communicates salvation. All shows to us the Son who reveals the mercy of God. Mark, with a few words, describes salvation. The Lord who enters into our life, it's close, he kneels down, and takes our hand, he raises it, pulls us up. But the other word of this and of the day that allow us finally to conclude, and is written in Mark that mother-in-law, as she had no longer fever, and then she started serving. She's healed in order to serve. This is that the opposite sign is of men and women that know sickness, illness, and that have known he who can heal. It's the church is those who are injured and were healed, that can become themselves healers, but by staying, remembering the wound. We are all healers who have been wounded and to serve. There's no other way to understand co-responsibility. Co-responsibility is service. Service that cures, sacrament of the care of God in history. Thank you. And I apologize for having been a bit long.
Grazie, Professor.
Thank you, Professor, for all your very rich input, especially because you have explained to us this experience of co-responsibility in daily life. And I think that this is important to make us reflect and then to be able to then start with you a Q&A session, because now we're going to have a short break, 20 minutes break. So until 5 o'clock, then we'll come back here to start a dialogue with the professor. I ask you please to come on time in order to try to stick to the timetable, and so not to lose the opportunity to other people who are going to have to present their groups to be able to do so. Thank you. Then I will see you back here at 5 o'clock. Thank you. We're going to have a Q&A session with the speaker.